Right now, as you watch this video, there is a very good chance that someone at your job knows exactly what you're doing on your work computer. Not just in a vague, IT might be able to see stuff kind of way. I mean, they know which websites you visited, how long you spent on each one, what you typed in emails, when you walked away from your desk, and in some cases, whether your facial expressions suggested you were paying attention. This is not science fiction. This is happening right now, in offices, in remote work setups, in warehouses, in call centers, all over the world. And most employees have absolutely no idea how deep this rabbit hole actually goes. So today, we are going to pull back the curtain on workplace surveillance. We are going to talk about exactly what tools your employer might be using to monitor you, how they work, what they can actually see, and most importantly, what you can do to protect yourself and your privacy without getting fired in the process. Because knowledge is power, and right now, most of the power in this conversation belongs entirely to the employer. Let's start with the basics, because before we get into the advanced stuff, you need to understand the foundation of how this monitoring ecosystem works. When you use a company device, whether that's a laptop, a desktop, a phone, or a tablet, your employer has the legal right in most places to monitor almost everything that happens on that device. And I do mean almost everything. The device belongs to them, the network belongs to them, and in many jurisdictions, the data generated on that device during work hours belongs to them too. That is the starting point, and it already puts employees at a significant disadvantage. Now here is where it gets really interesting. Many people assume that if they just stay off suspicious websites or keep their personal stuff off their work computer, they are basically fine. But that assumption is about 10 years out of date. The tools available to employers today go way beyond basic web filtering or checking your browsing history. We are talking about a sophisticated, layered surveillance architecture that most employees never even think about. Let's talk about endpoint monitoring software first. These are programs that get installed directly onto your work device, and they run quietly in the background. You usually cannot see them. They are not showing up in your taskbar or sending you notifications. They are just sitting there, logging. And what can they log? Keystrokes. Every single key you press. Screenshots taken at random intervals or continuously throughout the day. Application usage, meaning which programs you opened and for how long. File activity, tracking when you create, move, copy, or delete files. Clipboard contents, meaning if you copy something, that can be captured. Email content, not just the subject lines, but the full text of messages you write and receive through company email systems. The list goes on. Some of the most widely used products in this space include tools like Terramind, Variato, ActiveTrack, and Hubstaff. These are legitimate businesses selling their products openly to HR departments and management teams. They are not hidden on some dark corner of the internet. They are marketed as productivity tools, compliance aids, and security solutions. And depending on your employer, any one of them could be running on your machine right now. Now let's layer in network monitoring, because this is separate from the device monitoring, and it catches a lot of people off guard. Your company's IT department can monitor everything that flows through the company's network. That means every website request, every download, every upload, every connection attempt. Even if you use a personal browser with private or incognito mode, that only stops the browser from saving your history locally. Your network traffic is still fully visible to whoever controls the network. Incognito mode is not a privacy tool in any meaningful corporate sense. It is purely a local history deletion tool. Some companies go even further with what's called deep packet inspection, which is a method of analyzing the actual content of data being transmitted over the network, not just the destination addresses. With the right setup, network administrators can potentially see the content of unencrypted communications passing through their systems. If you are on the company network, whether in the office or connected through a company VPN, you should assume that your traffic is visible. Remote work changed everything, by the way. When millions of people shifted to working from home, employers who were already anxious about productivity suddenly had a new problem. They could not see their employees. They could not walk by someone's desk and check in. They could not observe body language or office presence. And so the surveillance industry experienced an enormous boom. Sales of employee monitoring software skyrocketed during and after the pandemic. Employers who had never thought much about tracking software suddenly became very interested customers. This brought in a new category of tools that many remote workers are dealing with right now: activity scoring systems. These are tools that assign you a score based on how much you are using your mouse and keyboard, how many emails you send, how many meetings you attend, how long you spend active in various applications. Your manager might be looking at a dashboard every day that gives you a score out of 10 and flags you if your activity dropped below a certain threshold on Tuesday afternoon. But wait, because we are not done yet. Let's talk about camera and biometric monitoring, which is where things start to feel genuinely dystopian. Some companies use webcam monitoring software as part of their remote work oversight strategy. These tools can take periodic photos through your webcam to verify that you are at your computer. Some of them go further and use AI to analyze those photos for things like eye contact with the screen, facial expressions suggesting distraction or frustration, and even attempts to detect whether a second person is present in the frame. There are companies using AI-powered emotion detection in the workplace. And while the science behind emotion detection from facial data is deeply contested and arguably unreliable, that has not stopped employers from buying and deploying it. In physical workplaces, surveillance goes even further. Smart badges that track your location throughout the building in real time. Biometric time clocks that use fingerprint or facial recognition to log your hours. Sensors on desks that detect whether you are sitting at your workstation. Listening devices in some facilities that monitor noise levels and flag unusual audio patterns. The modern workplace, both physical and digital, is one of the most heavily monitored environments most people ever inhabit. And here's the thing that really should bother you. In most countries and most US states, employers are not legally required to tell you exactly what monitoring tools they are using or how extensively they are deployed. Many employment agreements contain vague language about how the company reserves the right to monitor company equipment and systems. You probably signed something like that. You probably did not read it closely, or if you did, you may not have fully understood the scope of what you were consenting to. Let's talk about legal boundaries, because they do exist, even if they are narrower than most people hope. In the United States, federal law sets a relatively low baseline of protection for employees on company systems. The Electronic Communications Privacy Act is the main federal framework, but it contains significant exceptions that allow employers to monitor communications on systems they own and operate. Some states have stronger protections. Connecticut and Delaware, for example, have laws requiring employers to specifically notify employees about electronic monitoring. Several European countries under GDPR have much stricter rules around workplace surveillance, requiring proportionality, transparency, and legitimate purpose. In the UK, Australia, and Canada, similar principles apply. Though enforcement varies considerably, the bottom line legally is this: if you are using company equipment on a company network, your legal privacy protections are limited and heavily context-dependent. The practical expectation of privacy on a work device is very low, and courts have generally sided with employers when disputes arise. So what does all of this mean for you? And more importantly, what can you actually do about it? Because this video is not just about making you feel watched and helpless. That would be a disservice to you. Let's talk about concrete, actionable strategies. Step 1 is the most important and the most underrated. Separate your digital life. This sounds obvious, but so many people blur the line between work and personal on a daily basis. Use your personal phone for personal conversations, personal research, personal anything. Do not use your work email for personal subscriptions, financial accounts, or any communication you would not want your employer to read. Do not shop, bank, scroll social media, or do anything personal on your work device. Treat your work computer the way you would treat a computer sitting in your employer's lobby. Behave on it accordingly, because functionally, that is what it is. Step 2 is to understand your company's monitoring policies to whatever extent you can. Check your employee handbook. Review whatever agreements you signed when you were hired. If your company has an IT or HR department, you can ask general questions about acceptable use policies. You are not going to get a full rundown of every surveillance tool they use, but you might get enough information to understand the landscape. Knowledge of what is in scope is genuinely useful. Step 3, and this one is specifically for remote workers, is to be very thoughtful about your home network. If you connect your work device to your home Wi-Fi network, your employer may have visibility into certain aspects of that network activity depending on how their monitoring tools are configured. Using a dedicated work device on a separate network segment, or at minimum, being aware that your home network is not a privacy shield when connected to company systems is important. Your personal devices on your home network are generally separate, but that boundary can blur depending on configuration. Step 4 is about communication. If you have concerns about sensitive topics, handle them on personal devices using encrypted personal communication tools like Signal for messaging. Do not have personal legal, financial, medical, or private conversations through any work communication platform. This includes Slack, Teams, Zoom, work email, or any other tool provided and managed by your employer. Even if you think a conversation is casual or harmless, you have no control over what gets logged, stored, or reviewed later. Step 5 is to document your own work. This might sound counterintuitive in a conversation about surveillance, but if you work in an environment where activity monitoring is heavy, having your own records of your work, your outputs, your contributions, and your hours provides a counterbalance. If a productivity algorithm ever flags you unfairly, or an automated score misrepresents your actual work, having your own documented evidence of what you accomplished can be protective. Step 6 addresses something that not many people think about, and that is the metadata of your work. The timing of when you send emails, when you log into systems, when you are active, can all be analyzed and interpreted. If you are someone who tends to take a long break in the afternoon and then works late in the evening, that pattern might look different on an activity monitoring dashboard than it does in terms of actual output. Being aware of how your patterns are likely to be read by automated systems and whether you need to think about that is a real consideration in many modern workplaces. Step 7 is to know your rights. Find out what laws apply in your specific location. If you are in a state or country with stronger employee monitoring notification requirements, find out if your employer is complying with them. If you believe monitoring practices are going beyond what was disclosed or what is legal in your jurisdiction, that is something worth discussing with an employment attorney. Many offer free initial consultations, and knowing where the legal lines are drawn in your specific situation gives you real leverage. Now I want to zoom out for a second, because there is a bigger conversation happening around all of this. The normalization of pervasive employee monitoring represents a significant shift in the power dynamic between employers and workers. And that shift deserves serious public attention. When an employer can track every keystroke, analyze facial expressions, score daily activity, and flag behavioral anomalies, they hold an enormous amount of informational power over every person they employ. That power can be used responsibly. It can also be used to discriminate, to target employees who raise concerns, to build cases for termination based on surveillance data that the employee never knew was being collected, or to create a workplace culture of anxiety and mistrust that drives away talented people. Research suggests that heavy monitoring actually tends to backfire in many cases. It reduces intrinsic motivation, damages trust between employees and management, increases stress levels, and in some studies has been linked to higher turnover rates. When people feel constantly watched and evaluated, They shift their behavior toward gaming the metrics rather than doing genuinely good work. You end up optimizing for the appearance of productivity rather than actual productivity. And smart employers are beginning to understand this, but many have not gotten there yet. There is also a data security angle that employees almost never think about. All of this surveillance data that companies collect about their employees has to be stored somewhere. It represents a significant corpus of sensitive personal information, behavioral patterns, communication records, biometric data in some cases. And like any large store of sensitive data, it is potentially a target. If your employer's surveillance infrastructure gets breached, that data about you could end up somewhere you really do not want it. So what is the right way to think about all of this as an individual navigating the modern workplace? Here is my honest take. You should go into any employment situation with clear eyes about the reality of the monitoring environment. You should not assume privacy where none exists on company systems. You should maintain a clean separation between your professional and personal digital lives. You should know what legal protections exist in your jurisdiction, and you should take the personal steps we discussed to protect your sensitive information and communications. But you should also understand that you are part of a larger story here. Employees pushing back on invasive monitoring, having conversations about it, demanding transparency, and advocating for reasonable workplace policies. That is how the cultural and legal frameworks around this issue evolve. The more aware people are of what is actually happening, the better positioned society is to decide where the lines should be drawn. You watched this whole video because something in the title resonated with you. Maybe you had a suspicion. Maybe something happened at work that made you wonder. Maybe you just wanted to understand the landscape. Whatever brought you here, I hope you are leaving with more clarity, more awareness, and more tools to navigate this reality. Share this video with someone who works at a desk, remotely or in person, because I promise you, most people in their lives have no idea how deep this goes. If you want to see more videos on digital privacy, workplace rights, corporate accountability, and the hidden systems shaping modern life, subscribe and hit the notification bell, because we are going to keep pulling on these threads. The next video is going to cover something that connects directly to everything we talked about today, and you do not want to miss it. Stay aware, stay informed, and I will see you there.